Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming the new year with another episode of No More Distractions. We cannot put into words how grateful we are for all of our guests and listeners that have been embarking on this journey with us. During this episode, I talk with Kathy Madeo, the yoga expert, the entrepreneur, the social media influencer, and founder of Kathy Madeo Yoga, about how to rebrand yourself. Kathy Madeo Yoga is a global online yoga school educating and empowering thousands of yoga students and teachers worldwide. During our conversation, she opens up to us about her life in Chicago, then LA, which used to be considered the Mecca of yoga on the West Coast, her life on the East Coast, and then Florida. I will not lie to you. This past year has been a challenge of balancing everything amongst the chaos. This is why it is so important to have these conversations like we have on our podcast, to be constantly reminded that we are not alone in this journey. The more I grow, the more my goals are shifting and the more I want to accomplish in life. So I always struggle with looking back to appreciate the effort I put in and the fruits of my labor, no matter if I meet my goals or not. With that being said, I am hoping to live this year in even greater alignment and mindfulness. I'm hoping I will be able to produce more of these episodes and invite more people in our beautiful community. I want to find different ways of opening the dialogue with you and hearing about what you are struggling with. I also just wanted to announce that we recently created a private Facebook group so we can all connect with each other and start talking. So after this episode, please go ahead and join the group. A bit more about Kathy. Kathy's deep knowledge of alignment draws students who want a solid foundation of the asana practice. Kathy's passion for living a yoga life brings those seeking a spiritual connection through the yoga practice, and her dedication to developing yoga teachers into the best version of themselves keeps students and teachers alike coming back for years. She has led 12 teacher trainings and graduated 250 people in over 40 countries. Are you ready to hear my conversation with Kathy? Let's do it. Kathy, hi. Thank you so much for joining our No More Distractions podcast today. I'm so excited to have you here. Yes. We know each other for a long time, but I feel like I haven't seen you for so long because you are far away from me now.
So long. Do you see a puppy in the back?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh my God. I think you should grab it at some point and show everybody your
I'll have
puppies.
to show everyone. Cuteness overload.
Yes. Okay, Kathy. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found yoga for anybody that doesn't know you?
Sure. So my name's Kathy, and I am a yoga teacher for quite some time, but I own an online yoga school, and I train yoga teachers and students from all over the world in teacher trainings and online yoga courses that I produce and under my school, Kathy Madeo Yoga. So that's what I do. I live in South Florida in Boca Raton with my 2 girls and my brand new puppy. And that's a little bit about me. And in terms of starting yoga, I'm just to put it in context, I'm 47 years old. So, but I did start yoga when I was relatively young, I think, but also, I think a lot of people find yoga this way, which is through college. So I was 19 and at the time I was studying to be a stage actress at a theater conservatory in Chicago. And as part of one of the like movement credits was they did yoga. And now this is like before you were born, right? This is like 1994 or something, I'm assuming before you were born. But so like 1994, I'm 19. And so yoga was different. Like it was like, I don't think I'd ever heard about yoga. Like I don't, but when I heard it, it didn't sound unfamiliar. Does that make sense? Like it wasn't something you just saw a lot of back then. In 1994, there weren't like yoga studios all over the place. So we went to this man's apartment in Chicago, and like that's where he taught his yoga students. And that's how I started yoga. And for me, I feel as though it was a homecoming because I was very spiritual before I found yoga at a young age. And I had come across a bunch of meditation books and Buddhist books. And so I had already been practicing meditation and it was already felt like a spiritual being. And so when I met yoga, when I came in contact with yoga, I felt like, oh, this feels right. This feels really good. And now I have a physical expression of my spiritual practice. So that's what it was like for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I had a very similar experience because I found yoga in college. And I remember myself at a younger age, like in high school, I tried so many different like sports, like volleyball, I did swimming, I did handball. And I felt like my body, like I wanted to be active, but I felt like I wasn't completely there. Like it wasn't resonating for me. And then when I found yoga in college, I was like, okay, this is a different way to move my body and be present and have spiritual conversations. So yeah. That's awesome.
It's like all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But wait, I think you have something else to share about your life before, I think, yoga.
Before yoga. Yeah. I mean, in some ways I feel like I've led like 9 lives already. But there was definitely a period where I was, and I was doing the actor thing, the actress thing, as so many aspiring artists do when they're young. So nothing special in that regard. But I got into acting when I was like 15, and then I went to like a performing arts high school that was a boarding school, and I ended up going to study at the theater conservatory I mentioned, but left the program my first year in. It just wasn't a right fit. I didn't like Chicago. No offense if you're from Chicago. It was just way too cold for me. And I literally got a U-Haul and moved myself to LA when I was 19. And I spent about a decade there just doing the actress thing, going to all the parties and doing the auditions and waiting tables and all the things.
How long did you do that for?
About 10 years. Yeah. I stopped acting. I think I was around 28, 29 or so. Now that whole time I was practicing yoga. So I was like in LA, found a great yoga studio. This is in my 20s. So my whole 20s, I was practicing yoga. And when I decided to leave the acting world, I had been practicing about 10 years and I did a teacher training like we do, right? That's what we do. And that was in my head, how I was going to transition out of acting was going to become a yoga teacher. And so that's how that started.
Wow. That must have been a crazy experience. Like you must have seen a lot during that time.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of stories that I could share or very much choose to not share.
But did you love LA? Like every time I go, I really enjoy LA, but I hear a lot of like bad things at the same time about LA. Like traffic is terrible. Like it's really spread out. Like, did you enjoy living there?
Yeah. So I think like with anything, there's pros and cons. I mean, the traffic is atrocious, like can like bring you to tears so bad, just sitting in traffic. But, similar to like the New York City subway, as you know, right? We all have this shared experience. So then it becomes like a cultural thing we can all laugh about in some ways and that we all get. So I feel like there's always a positive way you can spin things in that way. But I did love LA at the time. Like, I mean, I was in my 20s. I went to just like fun parties and I was, auditioning. And then at the same time, it was like I had really bad, probably some of the worst things that have happened to me in my life happened during that period. So it was a lot of also struggle and challenge, but that's your 20s, I feel like. And I'm happy that I was there. It was a very cool place to live. I'm sure it still is, but I also, kind of as a yoga practitioner and teacher, got to grow up in the mecca of yoga in the West. Like yoga started in the West in Los Angeles. In fact, the very last place I lived was in walking distance. I'm going to blank on the name, but it's where Yogananda came and like his whole fellowship is there. Like I used to be able to walk and just like meditate. And so it was cool to spend my whole 20s kind of immersed in the LA scene and be inspired and influenced by the yoga that was happening there, which has really informed me as a yoga practitioner and inspired me, because I remember being in the classroom and seeing, you see crazy stuff that now I can go, oh, they were doing press up handstand and they were floating. But back then, like no one was calling it those things, So it's just cool to have been practicing so long and seen the trajectory, the evolution of yoga, but also seen that there was a lot of stuff happening even in the 90s in the yoga scene that was really cool.
That's awesome. And then you somehow found your way to Princeton, New Jersey, because that's where I met you.
Yeah.
Boy. Yeah, if you can talk to us about that transition. And then I just have to say, like, you had such a great career there. You were doing amazing. I feel like you taught so many people how to do handstands. And then you also transitioned again to another great warm environment where you are now, and you started something huge, like being able to transfer the knowledge that you've been giving to all your students in person to an online platform, right? And be able to create all those like guides online and the YouTube videos and your online classes. So how did all of that happen, and how did you feel that is the correct path to go after what you had?
Yeah, well, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there, just because I have been around quite some time here. So, what led me to New Jersey and leaving LA is I got married and I started to get concerned that I wouldn't be able to sustain a living and quite simply afford to be a yoga teacher. I started to get really concerned. I wanted kids. And then I thought of like, well, how many years can my body even do yoga? And I really let fear get the best of me and let kind of what society tells us that we need to do. I started listening to those things as I was getting older. I was like around 30 at this time, right? And so I made a big 180 and I went back to school. And that brought me to the East Coast. My husband at the time and I went to Columbia. So we were in undergrad school. So I was in my 30s at Columbia as an undergraduate and I was pregnant. So I actually deferred. I had my baby and I went to Columbia. And so I did this huge 180 and, a lot of things happened, graduated. We moved actually back to the West Coast. My former husband got a job at Google, and then I wanted to go to grad school. We went back to the East Coast. It was like a lot of stuff happening. And when I look back now, it was almost like a a storm, if you will, and I was being pulled this way and that. And I think it was because I was not on my path. I was not, I was on my path. I was like, no, I'm scared of this path. Let me get off. I need to get off. And so I did all of these things, and I felt myself tugged in many ways. And I even went on to get a master's degree at University of Virginia. And then, my ex got a job in New Jersey, and that's what pulled us there. And so, I was like not teaching yoga. I was working corporate America. I hated it. I was so miserable. I didn't, no offense to New Jersey, you all, I love my New Jersey peeps, but I was like, how did I end up here in New Jersey? Like, what am I doing here? And it's mainly for me because I just don't like cold weather. Like, I'm like a Florida, California girl. I need the sun. So yeah, that's how that happened. And then I had my second child, and I'm getting to the next shift back to yoga. She was born with a condition. She's completely healthy now, but at the time, I had to care for her for a year. So it was like a blessing in disguise, because I had to leave my job, and great, because I was not happy. Right. And so that quiet, precious year with her, caring for her, also gave me the time to think about, what the heck am I doing? At the time I was like mid to late 30s, miserable, just felt completely lost, felt so off track, would look at myself and just be like, who is this person? This is not me. I couldn't figure it out. And so what I did was I do what yoga people do that are on the path. I went inward. I meditated a lot. I asked big questions. I remember I was listening to Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now on audio on repeat, and I would just meditate. And I was asking myself, what makes me happy? What makes me happy? What makes me happy? And one day, I've told this story before, but one day I was driving, and I actually heard a bell sound like a gong. And I heard a voice, and the voice said, "You teach yoga and open a yoga studio." And It was like, kind of came out of nowhere, because I was like, teach yoga? It's like, I have a master's degree. I'm not going to go teach yoga. You know what I mean? And I just, from that moment on, I just put myself back on the path. And from that moment on, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was. I think I suddenly, I listened to the call, not to sound too woo-woo, but I did. I listened to the call, and things just fell into place. It all just fell into place. And again, not to suggest I haven't been working, because I've been working my butt off. But so it kind of triggered a series of positive events that have kind of led me, towards growing online. And then when we met, as you mentioned, I had opened a local in New Jersey, in the Princeton area, yoga studio. And so I was running the studio, and I built the studio and all of that. And then at the same time, I was very interested in the online space. And this is still a long time ago, maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. And so I started posting YouTube videos, and when Instagram was around, I got on Instagram, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. You're just using the tools, and it was a whole new world teaching yoga now with the social media and everything. And at a certain point, as I was running the studio, and I love my local community, and I loved being a leader in the yoga community locally, there's something about the online space that really excites me. It just really excites me. And having been an actress, like, I love film and I love creating. And it was like now I get to create these videos, and I get to call the shots, and it can come from me, even though I'm doing yoga. It was like my past acting background and my yoga finally like worked together. And
makes sense now. Now that
what's that?
Now that you explain it this way, it totally makes sense.
Right?
Yeah, like how you really got into the videos and you loved like directing, and yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, so then, and the next big shift that happened was, well, how did I go from running a brick and mortar yoga studio to, having an online school? Was, I just was at that time where I felt with my family, like if I don't move, I'm going to be stuck. I felt like I was getting stuck in New Jersey. And, so I moved, and that triggered another series of events where ended up separating from my spouse, and we ended up getting divorced. And that was right before COVID happened, right? And so he went back to New Jersey and kind of was wrapping things up with the studio. Mm-hmm. And I was suddenly a single mom because he wasn't local, and I had no job, and because I didn't have my yoga studio, and it hadn't sold or anything. So it wasn't like I had money from the sale of the studio or anything. And then COVID happened, and I was like, oh my God. Like,
I can't imagine. Yeah.
I remember calling my mom at some point and being like, I literally might, I don't know, I might need to live in the car. Or like, I literally don't know what to do. There's no money coming in. There's no money, and no one's working, and I've got kids, so I can't go work. I felt really, just at a huge low for myself, as I think many people did. I know I'm not alone. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I was, when I get like that, I did kind of what I did before, that I told you with my daughter, just kind of went inward, started meditating. And I was also watching, I was watching what the yoga community was doing. I was watching how everyone was going live for free on Instagram, and everyone, which was great because we all needed the classes. We're all sitting at home. People need to move. But also at the same time, I would get DMs from people. Why aren't you teaching live classes? Why aren't you? And me as like a single mom whose livelihood is on yoga, I was like, what? What am I'm supposed to teach yoga for free now? Yeah. And I was really just like, and then I watched a lot of studios start to put things online, and I thought, I had filmed my first online series, Activate Your Core. And I thought, maybe I'll put that on sale. So I put that on sale. And it did really well. It did better than it had done in the whole 3 years that I sold it in 3 days. And so I was like, okay, I have an audience. I've never sold to them. I have this social media trust that I've built. Maybe I could make a business out of this, So I went in, I filmed another series, Activate Your Handstands, and that did really well. And then people started asking me if I would put online teacher training online. And I was like, no, I can't do that. No. It's like, you cannot teach yoga teachers to teach online. I'm not doing that, But then I started I watched studios put their programs online as long Zoom sessions. And I thought, no, that's just not the way. They're not adapting to online learning. That's not how we learn online. We don't sit in 7-hour sessions staring at a tiny computer screen. It's just, It's not the way people should learn online. And so having produced so many yoga videos, because I did them. Also, I had started a platform with my yoga studio. I thought, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be me. This was in my head. I'm like, I could set a standard. I could like raise the bar of online yoga education. And that became my passion. That became what I determined to do. And how I came to that was really like it was when it went from my head into my gut. And I knew I had to do it. I knew it was the right thing. And that's kind of when it started, so I went in, during everyone was in lockdown. I had $0, literally $0. And I started to sell the training, which is really risky. I don't recommend it, people. I don't recommend it.
So you started, so after the first 2 courses you did, right? The Activate Your Core and your handstands, you started with the training right away?
I did. I started to sell. So now I had the infrastructure. Remember, I already had the website and the ability to sell courses and stuff like that. But I didn't have any money to make the teacher training. I didn't have any money to actually film the videos. And my teacher training is so, it's really high quality and very dense. There's a lot of videos and there's actually 287 videos. And I knew I couldn't do that myself. I needed to hire a videographer to film and edit it, most of it. And so, but I couldn't afford him. And so I got my quote from him, and he knew I didn't have any money. And I said, if I can sell 8, I'm going to green light the project, and that's it. 8 sales would help me break even. It would basically pay for him,
Right.
And I remember when I launched, I couldn't sleep, Sonia, for like 3 weeks. The pressure, it was just like, and so, and then it sold, and it didn't just sell, it like sold out in like 3 weeks. And that's it, and I ended up doing 4 teacher trainings in the first year. And now I've lost count at this point. I think about 10 or 11, maybe a dozen, graduated over 250 people in over 40 countries, which is really exciting. And then, I've produced about 9 online yoga series in addition to that. And, thousands of people practice with that all over the world. So it was really, really exciting to create something from literally nothing, from no money. So it can be done. And
That's amazing. That's, I followed your journey, obviously, and I saw this happening, but I didn't know every single detail about the background and how much you struggled. But, it's very inspiring, because I think there is a lot of people, especially now, I think after COVID, a lot of people are trying to be independent and do something on their own. And social media is like really growing fast, and it's becoming a platform that everybody's using, from very big businesses that have a lot of capital and they can spend a lot of money on marketing, to people that they do everything on their own. And seeing you growing so quickly, so fast is amazing.
I thank Kathy for joining us and sharing her inspiring story with all of us. Fun fact, Kathy was the expert on handstand training during my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and an awesome director for our studio's yoga promo videos. I cannot stop thinking about the very pivotal moment where she moved from the East Coast, and she started from zero and rebranded herself during the very first global quarantine due to COVID. She found the gap in the market and focused on how to raise the bar in online yoga education. If you found Kathy's story inspiring, please let us know via Instagram, Facebook, or just email us. To learn more about Namaste City and this podcast, please visit namastecitylife.com and feel free to drop us a message by visiting the Contact Us page. You can follow Namaste City on Instagram or Facebook. And if you have not already done so, please go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Thanks for listening to No More Distractions by Namaste City, hosted by me, Sonia. Today's episode guest was Kathy Madeo from Kathy Madeo Yoga. You can connect with her through her personal Instagram account at Kathy Madeo. Also, I have some news for you. Our producer rebranded himself, so the audio production today was done by NuEarth at NuEarth Studios. Thanks, guys. See ya.